back to Founders Found Here. I'm sitting down with Pam Narowski. Pam is our Chief Experience Officer at Day One, and we've known each other for 7 years, something like that, long time. We've worked together for a while, we've been friends for a while, so this is a fun episode, and we have a lot to dig into.
Yep.
Second interview we've done together, we did one years ago, and don't pull it up on YouTube because it's old and it's bad, and I look really young. I had a bad haircut, and so let's just pretend that
we'll be much improved since our last one.
So Pam, you were a teacher, and you eventually became an entrepreneur.
Yep.
That's a big shift. That's a big story I think a lot of people should hear.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What happened and who are you?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about starting my career as an educator is first, whenever you're kind of like stigmatized as being a teacher, that's all you are, right? Like how many people have you met and you're like, oh, that person's, that's so teacher-like, or that outfit is teacher-like. It's just such a huge thing. So being a teacher was a huge part of my identity. And then the thing about being a teacher is it also makes you realize like how many problems there are in the world that desperately need solved. Yeah. So you start to really search for ways of like, how do I make these big shifts that need to happen in the world? And what I found is that kind of led me to always exploring, well, what else is out there besides being a teacher? And eventually, like my path had many swerves and turns, as many people's paths do. But eventually that led to me starting a curriculum design agency with someone else. And the thing that was really interesting for me in that journey, though, is I still identified as an educator, even though I was building a business. Mm-hmm. So much so that when people would like say, oh my gosh, like you're building this really cool thing and this is so great, I would be like, well, yeah, but you know, I'm a teacher. Yeah. Like that's really what I am.
So let's get this straight. You're a teacher who's designing curriculum for your students.
Yeah.
And then eventually you realized I need to do this commercially as a business, help other people design curriculums. What happened?
There were so many more like twists and turns within that, but essentially what happened is there was a step in between. So I started and, you know, was a teacher, yes, designing curriculum for my students, but you know, when you're designing curriculum for your students, you're like not getting paid for that. You're just getting paid to be a teacher, right? Yeah. Then I ended up going into like a corporate sales gig. And with the corporate sales gig, I realized that I don't care about selling, you know, things for other people. I really cared more about like creating experiences for people and wanted to lean into that skill set. But at the same time, being a teacher, I mean, anyone who's done it, it's heroic. It's really, really tough. The pay is really, really low. You deeply care about your kids. You see like such profound inequities. It's really emotionally and all that challenging. Yeah. So I really wanted to find a way to leverage the skill sets of sales and to leverage the skill set that I had built as a teacher, but at the same time, like create the life that I wanted. And that's what led me to be an entrepreneur. And I think so many people, you know, would look at my experience and say like, I don't understand how it happened, but it actually flowed really naturally. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So that was the path.
That was the path. And do you meet educators today that you see entrepreneurial tendencies in them?
Oh my gosh, so much.
How does that conversation go?
Basically I tell everyone, like, if you can hire a teacher for many, many different types of roles, they probably already have that skill set. So sales, entrepreneurial, you know, entrepreneurs, et cetera, because they already have the ability to problem solve at this like crazy level. I forget your original question, but that was just my like shameless plug for teachers.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So, all right. So now you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of entrepreneurship. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I had major imposter syndrome when I became an entrepreneur. Yeah. So much so, it's actually Denver Startup Week right now, and this week is always a really interesting like time for me because the first time that I was an entrepreneur and Denver Startup Week was going on, my husband had built many companies and he was like, hey, I'm going to this Denver Startup Week event. I think you'll make great people. You should totally come. And I was like, I can't go to Denver Startup Week. Like, that's not for me. That's for people who are entrepreneurs. Meanwhile, like my company was doing very well. We were at 600K in revenue. There were lots of great things happening. And, you know, when I look now with my experience and I look back on that past Pam as an entrepreneur, I was doing amazing things with my team and you know, the person who founded the company. But I still didn't think I was worthy of showing up to a startup event that's actually designed for exactly where I was in the journey.
It's funny. So there's a lot of buzzwords in entrepreneur world. Imposter syndrome is one of them.
Yeah.
And we throw it around a lot because it's a buzzword. My next question is, and you kind of already answered it though, it's like, what did that feel like for you? What was the tactile of it? It felt like denial.
Yeah.
Didn't even feel like anything.
I think the thing about imposter syndrome is that you're really the worthiness piece. Like, am I worth being in this environment and being called this? You have so much self-doubt whenever you're an entrepreneur already, because you're getting feedback at a next level way that most people never experience in their entire careers, right? Because you're approaching people and saying like, buy this thing, or trust in me as a person. So it's more common, I think, in the startup world and being an entrepreneur than anywhere else to feel this deep sense of, being an imposter, because you're already constantly faced with that self-doubt. So the way it then manifests is like, should I be here? Should I be here? No, I'm not worthy of it. And yeah, I think that's how it ended up, that's what it felt like. That's like how it came to be for me. Now, did I overcome it and just show up? Yes. And luckily, because I think the culture in the startup world has luckily shifted, people, I'd see other people who I like looked up to and thought were the most amazing, like pedestal next level. And I'd look at them and they would say, I feel imposter syndrome too. And I think that that's why it's so important for people to continue to like be vulnerable and say like, I felt like that, because I thought, oh my God, how could they have ever felt like that? And then I realized people were looking at me and saying the same thing. So yeah, that's how it goes.
What was the first event you went to that you finally got yourself to go?
Oh gosh. I actually don't remember. It was just a panel. And I was sitting in the audience and I remember desperately wanting to ask a question and I like wasn't quite there yet. Now I'm like that annoying person that asks a question like all the time.
Did you feel at home? Was it surprising?
No, I didn't feel at home, but I did feel like these were my people. I know that kind of sounds like a contradiction, but when I saw the people on the stage, what I saw in them were the things that I felt within myself. So things that I saw in the people, in the entrepreneur, the stereotypical entrepreneurs, is I saw that they saw this thing in the world and they said, this thing needs to change and I'm going to be the person that builds that. I saw that proactive nature and that like confidence. It takes this insane amount of confidence to be an entrepreneur. And I saw that like that spark in them that I, like one of the things I respected about myself, I saw that in them. So while I didn't really truly feel like, oh, I should be that, I did feel finally a sense of people who were unwilling to accept the standard and the stories that were constantly given within, the world. They were just like, screw that, like I'm gonna do my own thing. So yeah, in some ways I guess I felt at home. Not quite yet, but now totally at home.
Now you're there. How many entrepreneurs do you talk to in any capacity on a weekly basis now?
Every single person I talk to, besides like a few people in my family, are probably entrepreneurs. My friend group.
Dozens. Every week. And of course through day one.
And of course through, being CXO at day one. I mean, I joke about it sometimes. It's not even that funny, but I'm like addicted to the entrepreneurial spirit. I think it's because I'm pretty unaccepting of people who have a narrative that they can't change things. So I try to attract people into my sphere who are like, I'm going to be the change. Yeah. And that's entrepreneurs.
How many of the entrepreneurs you talk to have imposter syndrome right now?
Yeah, gosh, 99.9%. And what's really funny is the ones who don't are sometimes like the ones who maybe should. So it's really not, like the confidence level is not necessarily based on like the level of success. I had someone who I recently had lunch with, and he is one of the most successful entrepreneurs I know. And I asked him like, would you be open to doing a talk for day one? And he's like, if I started another company, I mean, he's had a massive exit now, like works at the company that, I think he's leading the company that acquired him actually. So he's doing great. He's like, Pam, honestly, like I need to do day one and like learn the basics again. I like don't know if I should do a talk, like, and I'm like, yeah, you could. And I think it would be great for people to hear from you, but just like to give that example of how many people have it. Absolutely.
So you yourself had an incredible transition from educator to entrepreneur, albeit there were a lot of, it wasn't linear, there was a lot of windy path within it. And now you help people do the same, whether they were educators or anything else. You help people become entrepreneurs. So many things to unpack with that one. How do you do it?
So, you know, the thing that we talked about is that so much of what I didn't have when I had imposter syndrome and I was at the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey was just the wrong mindset and just, you know, self-doubt, right? So one of the things that I am really cognizant of when coming to entrepreneurs and designing experiences for entrepreneurs is to meet them where they're at with the fact that they are doing something that's super high risk that they might not have ever done before. They are dealing with all of the full life implications of what it means to be an entrepreneur, the complexity around family, around lack of stability, around risk, all of it. And at the same time, they're trying to figure out how to make this thing work. They're trying to figure out like what's the piece I'm missing to make this thing take off. So when designing these full pieces of experiences, I'm holistically looking at all of that and saying, okay, how do I design with all of that in mind and having empathy for all of those pieces and creating experiences that are accessible, that are so interactive, and that allow people to show up as they are and allow them to be who they are in that moment. Meaning, like, if they don't know the answers to a question, I want them to say, like, I don't know, and raise their hand and feel like it's a super safe space and environment for that. And at the same time, I want to empower them with those really complex, hard things to learn. So yeah, that's how we design. I mean, I can go into the details of it all day long because it's so fun to build, but yeah, that's how we do it.
I have so many questions. One that's burning for me right now is very relevant to the time. So education as a whole has changed drastically over the last 2 years with work from home and remote schooling, cohort-based communities, and Day One is right in the center of it. And you joined because of your background and because you see a future in general. What do you think's going on in the world of education right now? What's your perspective on it?
So that's a huge question, and I don't know if I'm fully qualified to answer, like, what's going on in the entire world.
Is that your imposter syndrome kicking in?
No, maybe not. No, actually, you're right. Thank you for calling me out on that, Jake. You're right. I do have enough expertise to know. But I would say this. So I actually don't know that so much has shifted about how people haven't changed the way that they learn. People have learned the same way over time. We've just switched the mechanisms and the pathways for how they're learning, right? They might be in front of a computer more. Candidly, there probably needs to continue to be massive shifts. And actually, we're incorporating those things at Day One now. And I can go into detail of some of those things.
Please.
But yeah, to answer your original question though, how have things shifted? I think it's been a massive wake-up call for people to say, now that they've seen their kids out of the classroom and they've experienced other types of learning, they're more open to allowing learning to take place in a way that's more organic for the way that humans actually learn, which is huge. It's huge because people are actually open to the shift, and COVID kind of forced us to be open to the idea that we don't have to be face-to-face in a space with a sage on the stage and people sitting there soaking up information. Yeah. So I think that that's a profound change, but again, just the beginning of scratching the surface of really meeting the possibilities that can happen in the space of education.
Something that scares me a little bit is I believe such a huge component of education is social.
Yeah.
And it's collaborative.
Absolutely.
And when you're in isolation in your bedroom, learning, even with a cohort of people collaboratively, but it's still on Zoom and you're still on different time zones potentially. There's different weather patterns in each of your homes.
Yeah.
You're wearing different types of clothing and feeling different emotions because it's a different time of day and whatever. It's actually not that collaborative, and you are still isolated.
Yeah.
It feels really strange and unique to me. What's your perspective on that component in how we learn and how we get educated?
I love that you mentioned it, and the thing that you kind of said is that you talked about the importance of shared experiences. That's what you're talking about, right? So when we're in a physical space together, all of our senses are experiencing really similar things. The way the lighting is, the way the way our skin feels, the way that something smells weird, or whatever it might be. And if we're in the same time zone, it's the same time of day, right? So the question then is, when you're designing these virtual experiences, how do you create so I should say with that, when we're all having these shared experiences that are physical, it creates connection between us. Yeah. And that's the way that we've said, that's the only way to do it for so long.
Since forever.
Forever, right? That's the only way to do it. But what we know is that, like, imagine this. I'm listening to a song and you're listening to a song in a different state, right? Yeah. Different times, whatever. But we're having a similar experience because there's something that music does for us.
So you're implanting, is that the right word? Implanting a shared experience that can be done remotely.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that we are more than our physical senses. And don't forget, we also have the physical, their sight and sound, that we are sharing together in very similar ways, right? So how do you leverage those things in the virtual environment and create an experience from those things? From the fact that we have music together, right? I mean, tiny little thing like we do at day one. Yeah. We play a song at the beginning of sessions, right? Yeah. Why do we do that? Because we're all vibing to the same beat now, right? We're putting something on the same rhythm. We are now sharing an experience together. It's a small piece, but it's important to leverage the experiences that we have in that space and create something that connects us, right? Yep. You can still have a conversation. You can still connect emotionally. And it's harder to do in some ways, but the thing that it allows us to do that we've never been able to do before is now you're in your home or you're in a place where you can design your physical environment to meet your needs. So imagine that, the fact that we all got to be in really comfortable pants for like a substantial amount of time, it creates a comfort level, right? Yeah. How often did you feel more connected to people because like their dog would run in the background, or like we all know that like famous clip that went viral where like the guy was doing the news thing and like his kid comes in, right? It created actually a sense of camaraderie that was different, but was still a beautiful experience. So I really do believe that you can design powerful human connected experiences in a virtual environment. And the thing, though, I will say, with a physical environment, there are certain experiences that you can only have when you are in those spaces. Yeah. So how do you differentiate designing experiences that are specifically meant to be virtual and are going to be amazing in that environment, and then you design other experiences that are specifically meant to be face-to-face? And leverage them for what they're good at and identify what those things are. And that's really what I lean into with designing. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you one of the golden questions here.
Oh gosh.
I know your answer, but I'm curious. I think we all must know your answer. But I'm curious how you take this maybe 10 steps further.
Yeah.
Are entrepreneurs born or made?
Oh gosh. Entrepreneurs make themselves. So I think that that's an interesting question for a lot of reasons. And some of it comes down to like definition of an entrepreneur. It's kind of like, if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be an entrepreneur, build something. Like, just do it. The difference between someone who is not an entrepreneur and is an entrepreneur is someone who is building something or someone who's not. Yeah. And I don't care if you have all of the qualities of an entrepreneur. if you are not building something, you are not an entrepreneur, right? So yeah, I mean, just doing it makes you an entrepreneur. Now, do I think that there are certain qualities that will help people on their journey? Absolutely. Do I think that most of those things can be learned, can be taught, can be, it might require a little bit of therapy, might require reading the right article, having the right piece of knowledge, but I think that entrepreneurs can be shaped. Yeah.
And you're teaching them.
Yep. And we're shaping them. I mean, it's more than just giving them information. It's shaping the right mindsets. It's allowing them the space to be great leaders, all of it.
How do you teach entrepreneurship compared to teaching anything else, like math or reading or a different language?
Actually, it's not that different. One of the things I kind of alluded to earlier, but so we know that certain types of information are better. This might be a little too nerdy, but that's okay. It might be kind of fun for people to hear. So certain types of information are better taught in certain types of contexts, right? We know that now, this is an easy example. If you're teaching baseball, it's better to play baseball than it is to read a book about baseball, right?
Can't learn how to swim by reading books about swimming. Exactly. Jump in the water.
You just jump in the water and you swim, right? So it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. So what we try to do is design experiences, essentially what we call a flipped classroom model. That's what we do at day one. Yep. So we essentially say, here's a piece of information, apply that information to your specific business, and now use it immediately. And we use it together in a coaching live environment. What doesn't work well is the opposite. Let's push lots of information to you, because we know all that's happening then is like, I'm learning a little bit. The average adult's likely to forget that information within 7 days anyway. They're not applying it to themselves, et cetera. So essentially, that's what we do is we really design the experiences to take that information and to apply it to their current entrepreneurial journey. Yep. And then it's like, you're going to remember it. Like if you're talking about, Andrew and I were just working on some of our growth curriculum that's coming up. And if we're saying like, here's what it looks like to figure out like what might be the best fit for your marketing channel. And then we say, hey, pick these 3 marketing channels and apply which ones you want to try. And like, let's work together with the creme de la creme of experts to figure out if that was the right move. You're going to learn what those marketing channels are. If I just said, learn the marketing channels, like you're not going to learn it. So that's how we do it.
So for people that are on the fence thinking about starting a company or a side hustle or selling muffins in the farmer's market, what's your number one piece of advice for them?
Oh, that's such a big question. It probably isn't what you might want, but I would say that when deciding to be an entrepreneur, you need to look at your whole life holistically, every piece of it, and decide how a specific business is going to fit into the life that you want, not just like, I want to create this business, right? What type of life will that business model allow you to have? Yep. And is that the life you want? Do you want to build a venture-backed company? And does that fit into your life right now? Because I think what a lot of people do is they say, I'm so excited to create this business, and then they start creating it, and it starts becoming what they wanted it to become, and they realize that it's just not a good fit. And actually, that's one of the main things that we focus on at day one at the beginning is finding, like the founder fit in many different types of ways. Totally. Founder opportunity fit, founder business model fit, all of it. So, yeah.
All right, quick lightning round. Sure. 3 books every entrepreneur should read this year.
Oh, gosh. Well, one of them, Jake, is Traction EOS.
Second person today to say that.
Oh, really? They probably, if it's somebody I knew, then I probably referred it to them, because that's the book that I have 10 copies that I always have in my house, and I give it out to people who are new entrepreneurs. So Traction EOS, number 1. I haven't actually read a lot of these books in a while. Can I do some podcasts instead?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I like Eric Sue and Neil Patel's podcasts on marketing. Okay. That's huge. If you're gonna do a VC-backed company, I think 20-minute VC is great. So yeah, is that what it's called? 20 minutes.
20-minute VC, yeah. It's a great one.
Yeah.
Awesome. How can people follow you online or get in touch?
LinkedIn's my only social media platform at the moment. Cool. And if you want to get in touch, you can also email me at pam@joinday1.com.
Cool.